People often think that you need to live in Japan to learn Japanese, but that is a lie. なんでかというと、私日本に住まなくても行かなくても日本語を話せるようになったからです。And today I'm sharing the 10 things that I did to go from a basic, run-of-the-mill Japanese speaker to お世話になっております、Ananya と申します。はい、こちらから連絡させていただきますが、はい、fluent in Japanese. I get asked this question by you guys a lot on Instagram and other social media, so I thought I would share with you guys the tips and tricks that I have to, just becoming fluent in Japanese, because I think there's a lot of little things that you can do that can completely transform how natural that you sound. And I know you guys can do it, so that's why I'm here today, and let's get into the video. So, who am I to explain this? Well, if you haven't seen me before, my name is Ananya, and I've been self-studying Japanese for over 7 years, and I guess I started actually 12 years ago. And yes, that is a very long time ago, but I still got it. Last year, I passed the JLPT N1, and if you don't know what that is, it is the Japanese language proficiency test, and it is the main test that's recognized by the Japanese government for Japanese proficiency, and N1 is the highest level of that exam. So, I got you guys. So with that, let's get into the video. Number 1 is I made Japanese my default language environment, and what that means is completely immersing myself with Japanese. And I know a lot of people talk about this online, and they do because it is true. It is the fastest way to get natural Japanese, and it's literally all I did for years and years, and that's how it works. So I want to share little things that you guys can do to improve your immersion. So you want to be living and breathing Japanese. And so in order to do that, you got to immerse yourself. So I wrote down a couple things that I did. I basically changed my entire environment. So my phone, I definitely didn't have the guts to completely change my keyboard and make it all Japanese just yet when I was starting out. So what I did was instead I would follow random Japanese people on Instagram and other social media and make sure that I was constantly just seeing Japanese content everywhere. And I also watched a lot of Japanese YouTubers. So one of my favorite Japanese YouTubers is a gamer called Kyo, and he does a lot of videos and he's one of the most popular gamers in Japan. And I basically just watch his playthroughs, and it forces you to kind of reflect on all the words that you're learning, and it's cool because you learn a new word or two, and if you make it a habit to look up any words that you don't know, it's actually a really good exercise for learning. Other things that I did, I honestly only listened to Japanese music, only watched Japanese TV shows, and only really had Japanese friends. So I kind of forced myself into an environment where even if I wasn't living in Japan, I could kind of simulate that experience and make my learning go a lot faster. But do take this tip with caution, because I was not popular in middle school for some reason, as you will not know anything about the pop culture in your own country or your own friend circle for that matter. And in my case, I didn't really have a lot of Japanese people in my environment in the first place. So I would go to Nikonama, which was like a Japanese live streaming website, and I would go there and talk to strangers and pretend to be Japanese. And they kind of allow you to just text on these live streams, and then, they can get to know you, and I would just pretend to be Japanese and see how far I could get without getting caught. So it was a great test, and it also forced me to learn how to type Japanese a lot faster. So live streams might be your thing. And I was talking to random adults across the country. Maybe not the best thing to do as a middle schooler, but hey, now I speak Japanese, so yeah. But anyway, making your environment only Japanese basically tricks your mind into kind of just learning from everything around you rather than being in textbook mode, and that just did not work for me. So a really good way to expedite your learning. My second tip is speaking early on. And I think a lot of people have mixed opinions on this, so I'm just gonna work off of what I did. I started speaking Japanese within the first 6 months that I was learning. The first 3 months were dedicated to just learning the basics, don't really need to talk to anyone. But after 3-6 months, you kind of pick up basic phrases, you can put together basic sentences, and at that point, you kind of need to just work with other people and talk to them, because you don't really know if you're going to mess up any grammar here and there. And so I had one pen pal, and I met him on Lang 8. He's an old man who lives in Kansai, and we would just call for 30 minutes to an hour every other week or so. And it was a great opportunity because he would fix my Japanese and I would fix his English, and it was a great opportunity to practice my Japanese, but it wasn't, the main part of my learning by any means. So it's good to at least keep yourself in that practice of speaking little by little and not getting completely caught up in, reading or writing, when I think majority of people just kind of want to speak Japanese with other people. And another thing, I was also doing a lot of speaking to myself. You are your best tool when learning a language. And so just talk to yourself, be like, ah, なんかお腹空いたな、この後どこに行こうかなとか、literally just let your mind wander. And it's actually a great opportunity because over time, as you speak to yourself, you'll start to catch moments where your pronunciation doesn't sound as right or your pitch accent's off. So it's a great way to train and practice, and it's just fun. Number 3 is physically blend Japanese into your world. And this is a little bit similar to the first thing we talked about, immersion, but I wanted to give you guys some more examples of other ways that you can blend Japanese into your daily life. Because I think there's other ways that you can tackle all 5 senses of your body, because when you're using all 5 of your senses to study Japanese, that's how it truly becomes something that you live and breathe every single day. So when I was in middle school, I actually didn't know that I did this, but my brother pointed it out, and that is putting post-its all over your house and labeling those signs with what they are. So if, for example, you have the TV right there, you can write terebi, which is TV, and stick a post-it on there, just anything in your house, and really make it easy so that whenever you see it, you remember, oh, this is the TV, oh, this is the bath. And so that way you're gonna be able to pick up these words really fast. And if you're like me, there's probably certain subcultures of Japan that you just personally love. And what I say is to really just deep dive into those hobbies. So for example, I love Japanese fashion. So I would, save up my change and buy Japanese magazines. And whenever I did, I would read them cover to cover. And every single word that I didn't know, I would use my dictionary app, and there's an app that I use called Japanese. This app also allows you to write the character out. So if you don't know what kanji it is and you don't really know how to read it, you can simply just write it and copy what you see, and the dictionary will actually find it for you. It's a great exercise because the outfits that you're looking at, for example, act as a great mnemonic to go along with the words. Another thing that I would do is cooking. So I bought a little baking cookbook, and what I did was I would make the desserts in the book, but before doing that, I would spend an hour or two translating everything that I needed to know and the instructions, so that way I would be good to go once I started baking. But in the process, I was actually learning a lot about, for example, osaji to kosaji. So I knew how to say tablespoon and teaspoon, and so I never had that issue when I moved to Japan, and I knew what those things were. So I recommend kind of mixing your hobbies into Japanese learning, and we'll get into that a little bit later. The 4th thing I would like to recommend is shadowing dramas. So if you read a lot of manga and watch a lot of anime just like me, I have very sad news. I personally don't think that you can really learn a lot of Japanese from anime and manga. I think it's a great tool to learn about the culture, but not so much for the language, because it's not natural for the most part. So what I decided to do instead was watch a lot of Japanese dramas. And there's a lot of good ones out right now. And it's great because it's actually natural Japanese. And what I would do is I would play a scene, for example, and if there's like a certain phrase or I like the way that they said a certain thing and I didn't know how to say it, I would just play the entire scene, and then I would go back and I would say the dialogue at the same time as the character. For example, if Ishihara Satomi was saying, そんなことないよ, I would be like, I would say it as I'm watching. そんなことないよ. そんなことないよ. For example, if I were to just learn that from a textbook, I wouldn't necessarily know how to pronounce it. I'd be like, そんなことないよ. And that's kind of why you see a lot of people have poor pitch accent that doesn't sound very natural. They're just learning from a textbook. You wouldn't know how people naturally pronounce it if you're not actually, experiencing it yourself. So, そんなことないよ is something you just wouldn't know how to pronounce unless you're learning it from a native speaker and in the context that they're talking about it in, not in like a class, for example, So I think it blends learning with the emotional factor of a language, and so you can really sound natural and truly say what you mean, but in a full context, like the emotion and tone and all of that. Number 5 is learning kanji, and kanji is definitely a lot of work, and I think people have different ways of learning it, but for me, what I did was I learned a lot of my preliminary kanji on WaniKani. I think it's a great resource. I did not pay for it. I think I had the beta version, so I've never used like the full thing, but I learned the basics like chu or sho, like all the little things that I would need to start off with. And once you have like a solid amount of like 200, 300 kanji, like you get an idea of what to expect. And I also know that Anki is a great option for that as well. But regardless, for kanji, thinking of mnemonics, thinking of what these images, these pictograms, which are kanji, what do these represent? What does this look like to me? And using that as like a tool to keep remembering and studying. And Japanese learning all goes hand in hand. So you can't just learn kanji. You should also be, reading sentences, listening to stuff. And if you don't, you're going to forget the kanji. So everything goes hand in hand. Number 6 is be creative. So as I mentioned earlier with how I blended Japanese with cooking and baking and all that, I think there's a lot of avenues where you can combine your hobbies with Japanese. Which brings in today's sponsor, Skillshare. For example, something that I've always wanted to do is digital artwork, for example, and that is very popular in Japan. And Skillshare has a course that I've been wanting to check out called Procreate for Beginners, learn the basics and sell your artwork. So I would take this class and learn digital artwork, design, and I would supplement it though with Japanese learning that's focused on design and digital artwork. So once you have a strong foundation on Skillshare with this digital artwork, I would look up, for example, Japanese art prints, I would look up Japanese designs, and there's actually specific names for all the traditional Japanese design styles that have been around for years and years. So it's really cool because you can apply Japanese to this course by blending in new artwork styles, and you have a niche knowledge of this incredible space of Japanese artwork. And it's things like these that can really propel your Japanese learning. And if artwork's not your thing, Skillshare is the largest online learning community of creatives with thousands of classes led by experts across film, illustration, design, business, content creation, and productivity. Skillshare can help take your career, skills, hobbies, passions, or side hustles to the next level. For example, if you guys are interested in AI, I think it's a great opportunity to mix AI with your Japanese learning because Japan is talking about AI a lot, and there's a lot of interesting senmon yogo, which is specialized technical terms that would be super useful to know if that's a space that you want to go into. Or if you like entrepreneurship, there's a lot of classes that you guys can check out. And it's a great thing to check out if you're planning to move to Japan to start your own business as well. And I have a special deal for you guys. The first 500 people to use the link in my description will receive a 1-month free trial of Skillshare. Get started today. Number 7 is making Japanese friends without actually being in Japan. People think that you need to be in Japan to actually speak Japanese, and I do not think so whatsoever because I don't think it's financially or realistic to be in Japan all the time. So as someone who had no financial means of visiting Japan for the first 5 years that I was learning Japanese, you gotta be creative. So I joined a lot of online communities. I used HelloTalk, which is a Japanese language matching platform where you can speak to other people. I used it religiously, literally every single day. And yeah, I just made friends there and just kept talking nonstop. So I would say I wouldn't recommend it until at least like your first year of studying. I think it's good to have a language partner, but I think HelloTalk can get a little bit distracting here and there. So I would want you to have more of an ability of speaking Japanese, making basic sentences and stuff before using it. So that's kind of how I took my Japanese from being kind of textbook focused to Joshikosei level, which is like Japanese high school girl level, because I would talk to a lot of other Japanese high school girls and just start copying the way that they were talking because I wanted to sound like them. And number 8 is just studying. And I feel like the thing that I was doing nonstop, in those 7 years that I was really just studying, at the end of the day, using flashcards with spaced repetition system was kind of like the bulk of everything that I was doing. Just every single day, looking at my flashcards, but not forcing myself too much. It'd be maybe for 10, 15 minutes in the morning, maybe 10 minutes at night. And it would always just be in my free time. So I wanted to take the time where I wasn't really doing anything in a commute or going somewhere, didn't have anything else to do. Okay, why not just look at my flashcards? Sometimes in the morning, if I was looking at my flashcards app for 10 minutes, throughout the day, I would try to recall what words I studied and test myself on those as well. So I think it really helps to always be thinking about Japanese and always be thinking of the new words that you're learning. And so just because you did 10 minutes in the morning, that doesn't mean that the work is over. Throughout the day, Japanese learning constantly continues, and just kind of let it seep into every facet of your life, and I promise you it will be much more natural. Kind of fixed with spaced repetition system, but if that's not the system that you're using, Just make sure that you're not just learning new words every single day. Constantly test yourself with previous words, old words. When I look at old flashcard decks, I'm actually surprised because there's a lot of words that I used to know, but I just ended up not really using, and so they kind of just drift away. And so continue to test yourself, and yeah. And number 9 is getting over the plateau. This is something that I haven't yet tackled on this channel, but you may have heard that there's a certain plateau that you reach with Japanese learning, and yes, that is true. I have been there, and I looked this up a little bit, but this usually happens with Japanese is where you understand the grammar, you can put together basic sentences. It kind of happens where you have a good grasp of vocabulary, but it's not really expanding as fast as it was before. But you've also sort of mastered the basic conversations, so they start to get a little bit repetitive, and you're kind of like, wait, what do I do from now on? And you know, I got stuck here as well, and I don't really know how to explain it, but it's really easy to get stuck in your comfort zone. And what I noticed was I kind of had the same Japanese friends, and you know, we would kind of just have the same conversations, and therefore I was just sort of like, man, I feel like there's a lot of Japanese I still need to know, but for some reason I just don't know how to get there. And I think your brain kind of creates this comfort zone once you understand like the basics of a language, because it kind of blurs out words that you don't know when you're talking to someone. And so what I realized I could do to increase my vocabulary is if I was talking to anyone new, and I would also try and meet new people, I would be very, very present and pay attention to words they say that I don't know. And if it's appropriate, I would grab my phone immediately after or during the conversation and look those words up, save them into a list, and study them later. And I've noticed that the people around me with the most natural sounding Japanese, they grab their phone within seconds and they already looked up the word. And I think it's that curiosity and desire to know these new words. So being a little obsessive about new words and Japanese in general will really enhance your Japanese learning. So once I started doing that, I realized there were a lot of things I didn't know. And number 10 is the one that I get asked about the most, and that is pronunciation. And the number one reason why my Japanese sounds natural and fluent is I focused on one thing, and that was pronunciation. I hyper-focused on it because I wanted to sound as natural as possible, like a typical Japanese high school girl. And in order to do that, I recommend all the tips that I just talked about, but along with that, just watch a lot of Japanese media, make Japanese friends, but especially talk to people that you want to sound like, or watch TV shows where characters are talking and you're like, I want to sound like that one person. And copy it. Copy everything. Train your ears so that they can pick up on pitch accent and pronunciation, and just when you're copying how they sound, it needs to be to a T. Another thing that I would do is, especially in the beginning, it was very hard to memorize rarirurero, or like the basic hiragana characters that have really hard pronunciations. And R sound is very difficult in Japanese, and I've talked about that previously on my channel. But there's a really good video that I think Tofugu made where he talks about where your tongue should be placed, how you should move your mouth, and how to get this sound. And taking the time to really like perfect those basic sounds will make your life so much easier down the line. Because even the F sound in Japanese, it's different from the English sound of F. For example, like F, like it's a very rough sound in English, but with Japanese, it's almost as if your lips aren't even touching when you say the sound. So it's like a hoo. You can get the sound without even putting your lips together. So as someone who spoke English growing up, if you're someone like me and spoke English growing up, it's going to be hard to suddenly switch to Japanese without actually knowing how you're supposed to pronounce each thing. So if you want to sound natural in Japanese, I highly implore you to take the time with every single type of sound and see if you're really getting the pronunciation correct. And I also see a lot of things about pitch accent, and looking back, I almost wish that I knew more about it, but realistically, I actually didn't know it existed. I just assumed pronunciation was kind of the only thing there, and I would fix my pitch accent unknowing to me by watching TV shows and shadowing and really training my ears to pick up on the different accents, but I didn't know that there was like a system. And you know, my method towards learning is I wanted to learn like a baby does, who, you know, I don't know, grew up in Nagano Prefecture and just learned from watching their mom and dad talk every single day, because I was not one for textbooks, and I think and it just wasn't the method for me. I think that there's a lot of good resources online, and most of them are free. I also have a course out that you guys can check out as well, but it really boils down to what really works for you, what really fits with you. So I would suggest to take on whichever of these 10 ideas that you really like and, implement them into your daily life. You don't have to do everything, but, picking and choosing a la carte and kind of molding your Japanese learning experience in a way that works for you. You don't really know what works for you until you try, so keep going and stay consistent, and you might have the most natural Japanese in no time, and you may become Nihongo Josu. So best of luck to all of you guys, and thank you so much for watching if you reached this point. If you enjoyed the video, make sure to like and subscribe to this channel if you haven't already, and I'll see you guys in the next video. Jenny!